Hi, I'm Michael Killen, and when I'm not here in the TV studio being a TV talk show host, I'm often at Stanford Radio, KZSU 90.1 FM. And when I'm over there, I tend to meet some very interesting people, and I've invited one of them to be here. He is the producer of a radio and podcast show, The Modern Architect, and his name is Tom Diorio.
Correct.
And Tom, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yes, and I've been impressed with you.
Thank you.
You know, and that you have a wonderful show on KZSU Radio. What is it, one day a week?
Yes, it's Mondays, every Monday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay. Is that your life?
No, it's
making radio interviews, right?
Yes, it is. It's a part of my life. I also am a principal of Accurate, which is we are an advisory firm for architects, engineers, and specifiers. We help source, vet, and recommend building materials, high-performance building materials, and technology improvements for the built environment.
So you run a service company. Give me a chance now. A service company that helps meet various needs of the architect community. Would that be correct?
Yes, it's a professional service firm for architects. It's called the ASD industry, or the Architect, Specifier, and Design Community.
Can't the architects do this stuff themselves?
And one of the challenges is time. It's really an issue of time. There's so many demands and requirements for architects and engineers that the time to source, vet material, high-performance materials, green material, and technology is just really difficult to do, in addition to all the other responsibilities they have and all the compliances that they need to meet on a day-to-day basis. And so I've filled that niche, so to help them make that easier, make their life easier.
Now, I seem to have heard three functional words, but I didn't get them all. Sourcing.
Correct.
Are you using that in the context of, let's say, an architectural firm gets a contract to design a building, a bridge, or whatever, and they have to indicate it in the plans for the builders, I guess.
It's specified, yeah.
To specify some of the products that are going to be used, the type of glass, the type of concrete, or whatever. And they could go to you, and you help them track down the source of materials or other services that the architect will need for that particular project.
Yes, correct. If they in particular, the building material or even the technology, not often, frequently those type of service or that need is not in-house, they call it, within the firms. So there's really no it's basically outsourcing that, but there really isn't an official title for who would do that. But that's what I would do, is I would help them source the material they're looking for, and also find the technology expert who can work on a project. I like to work on I look at everything on a per project basis.
Per project basis.
Yes.
Okay, and you're a helper.
Most definitely.
Sure. And did I hear the word vetting?
Correct, you did.
What do you? I know what a vet. Somebody checks something out. How does it fit in your profession, vetting?
Well, when you're sourcing the material, the technology, how you vet them is, again, we'll go back to time. Is the architects or the engineers or the designers or specifiers, they don't have that time to look at just a ton of different new material, and a lot of it is really good, but they not only is it challenging to find to source it, but actually how do you make sure that it's the right product? Is it approved through all the UL listings? Has it had a third-party testing? And those are the things that I actually enjoy doing. So
really?
I love looking at all the new the new technologies and what's coming out, and there's so many that it's really hard to keep up with them all.
So sourcing, vetting, what was the other one?
Source, vet, and then recommend.
And then, so you then recommend what kind of glass or whatever?
Yeah, the most efficient glass, the highest performance. But then you use something like glass. There's so many different manufacturers of glass and so many grades of it and different qualities. And oftentimes, the architects, the owner has specified, a specific type of glass, and the architect is not sure where I find this sort of, extra rated glass. They either come to me or I come to them or both.
Okay. How did you get into this business?
How did I get into this business? Well, I've been involved with building materials for a little over about 15, 16 years, and with a couple of companies, and I work with architects with it, and I would do it while I work with the architects just to kind of help them out with some of the projects, and it just got to be, hey, why don't you, one of the major architect firms said, why don't you do this on your own? We like working with you. Why don't you form your own company and do that? And I thought, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And about a year or 2 years later, I decided, okay, I'm going to do that, and I came up with accurate because you want to try, trust is obviously important, but I think the accurate was like, you got to be on point all the time. And I like to say in my business, whether I like it, it's or not, I have a very thin margin for error with the people I work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to be an architect?
No, I have no desire to be an architect.
What did you want to be when you were a little boy?
I don't think I had any occupation in mind. I just I went with things that I really liked and enjoyed, and a lot of it was what's called the built environment. I've always been fascinated with the materials that's used and the technology involved with the built environment, meaning homes, buildings.
Built
Built environment.
What's that mean?
The built environment is the total, the envelope of the building, whether it's a home or a commercial building or any venue. That's called the built environment. It's what we live in, our homes, our houses, our streets, our cities, our coffee shop. It's a built environment, and I've always been fascinated with the look of it and what do they use that's efficient, effective, and sustainable.
Shortly, I'm going to do a show with a group of people who are on a team helping to prepare California for disasters like the next great earthquake. And buildings, regulations, etc., are very important. Have there been any recent developments to help make buildings more seismic resistant?
Correct. Yeah, there are. There are a couple instruments. I won't name names of companies, but they're able to look at buildings as if the equivalent of an MRI machine. Are you familiar with an MRI machine for health?
I just
or
had
an X-ray.
They looked at my brain recently. They did. Yeah.
What'd they see?
They found a hole. They really did. But
okay.
That's okay with me.
Anyway, so you take that technology that they use to find the hole. Well, that technology exists several places for buildings where you can take, you can actually gauge and measure an entire building like you can your brain or your knee or like an X-ray, where you can see throughout the entire building. Actually, Stanford's doing a couple of interesting things that I'm not at liberty to share with, but you can actually see through a building. So usually you have to measure everything and quantify all the materials, but these machines actually see through it like an X-ray. They're so fine, they can even see the inscription of the number on a nail head.
So they can then see possible areas where a fault,
fractures, fissures, yes,
that are already occurring,
that are occurring, have occurred, and will occur.
And then they can do something proactively.
Definitely.
Before the earth shifts.
Yeah, well, it will shift. It's what are you going to do about it before it does shift, or knowing it's going to shift.
Okay. Now, I also would like to ask you, what is the big development in helping to make buildings more energy efficient?
What is the big, say again? The big development, huh?
Yeah, the big advancements to make buildings more energy efficient.
Well, a lot of appliance companies have done a really good job of making their appliances more energy efficient. The mechanical structure of a building is a lot more, it's changed significantly, say, even in the last 5 years. There's lighting. Lighting is a lot more efficient with LED lights. There's a number of really good manufacturers that produce high quality LED lights. So there are a number, just about every facet of a building you can imagine, there are improvements, and there continue to be improvements.
Would the big improvements be in the area of air conditioning, heating and air conditioning, as well as lighting? Are those the two, or where is insulation?
Insulation is in there as well. One of the challenges of every home or every building is what's called indoor air pollution. And indoor air pollution is actually, it can be worse. Actually, it has been quantified in some cases, in many cases, as worse than what's outdoor pollution.
Really?
And that, yeah, those are things like, you know, the paints that have been used, or the ventilation system. You know, air ducts are not clean. You know, it's basically we're not all living in what's called a healthy building because of those factors.
Okay, wonderful. And you know, there's great concern here in California, and I guess in other parts of the world, for housing. You know, it's very hard for people to find a place to live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And if they do find a place to live, it is extremely, relatively speaking, expensive. Are there any good developments that you can mention to get housing that costs less to put in place?
Yes, yes, there are solutions for that. There are a number of what they call modular structures, where they're pre-made typically in a factory. It's housed, so the modular buildings are one. I don't know if you want to name companies, but there's a company out of Austin, Texas called KZSU, and KZSU has built basically the modular unit as a product, not just an actual building. So it's really plug and play. It's energy efficient. It's got all the smart technology into it, and it's relatively quite affordable if you're going to compare it to the Bay Area prices. You simply need, you know, the land to place it in, which is definitely going to be a solution for people looking for houses here in the Bay Area.
So can what you're referring to, this particular company in Texas, you know, they have a module, can I hook another module, and wind up with an apartment building?
Yes, you can. Yes,
really?
you absolutely can.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So
certainly.
You have two professions. Would I be correct to say that?
Three.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm actually a father as well.
You call that a profession?
Absolutely, especially if you want to try to do it right.
How many children do you have?
Three children, three kids.
3 children. I know you have a 15-year-old daughter.
17, 21, and 14-year-old son.
14-year-old son and 2 girls?
Yes.
Oh, and are they
heading? And my wife, yes.
And a wife. Oh, good to have one of those. Are the kids heading off to college?
Daughter, 21, is 17, and my 17-year-old is still a senior in high school. She will be. Yeah.
The 21-year-old has gone off.
She's been in college, yes, and she's also in profession as well. She's a professional.
Would you like to say what that is?
Sure. She works at a firm in Redwood Shores called Imperva. And she works in marketing. I don't know the specific title, but she's in marketing. She's in New York. She's in New York as we speak.
Dad doesn't know the specific title of the work, especially. Okay.
She's dynamic.
Okay, so you consider raising children extremely important. That's good, and you are the head of this architectural service firm called Accurate.
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 Accurate. ACCURATE. Accurate.
Accurate. Forgive me, you know.
We'll get it right.
All right, and now you have a third profession, and I think I know what it is. You are a radio talk show host.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Yes.
And
radio talk show host, producer and radio talk show host.
And you do this at the same place I make some shows.
Yeah, KZSU Stanford.
And you like being a radio talk show host?
I love it. I don't like it. I love it.
Why?
Why? Well, that's a good question. I've never thought why. It's just it's great to engage with the architects and the engineers in a lighter setting, and I think it's also nice to be around in the station and the environment to ask them questions about their profession. What are kind of their concerns? What are their joys? What are their struggles? And those aren't the typical questions that you can ask on a work or job site.
Okay, so you like interviewing architects, okay?
Or
And
civic leaders. You know, we have mayors,
so, you know,
heads of building departments.
what do you get out of interviewing a mayor? I mean, are you going to really learn anything?
Oh, absolutely.
What do you learn, for example?
Well, there's a couple of things you can learn. One is you learn that they're human. What I mean by that is that they're people as well. They're not just mayors or a statue that we all kind of look up to or get upset about. They're people with concerns, and in every case, they deeply concern a lot more than I would have ever thought as just seeing them from the outside or objectively. And you get to hear what kind of policies and projects they're working on for the city to make it better.
Sure, and I guess you get to see that these people really care.
For sure.
You know,
all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, on my show, the television show, you know, I have had mayors, senators, etc., and also on the radio show at Stanford to the extent, and I am always impressed at how dedicated a lot of these political leaders are. They really have our best interest.
Yeah, I would say so, and that's not just a pat them on the back. I think so, more so than I would have ever thought had I not had the show. Where you really get to engage with them on a personal level.
And so you do an interview every week.
Every week, we record on Thursdays, and it's broadcast on Mondays.
Okay, so you record it, and then everyone goes into the studio on Thursday?
Yeah, we record on Thursdays.
In one of those little rooms, I think?
Yeah, sometimes it's the little room, or if you have some multiple guests, then it's obviously in the larger studio, so we all mic'd up.
So when you sit down with the guest and the microphones go on, the recording devices go on, do you get a little anxious?
Anxious as in nervous?
Yes.
No, I wish I did.
Well, really?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm actually excited to talk with them. I anticipate every guest that I have.
All right. And do you have very specific pieces of information that you want to get out of that particular guest?
Yeah, we have several topics that we like to discuss, or we coordinate before we meet, topics that we'd like to cover, and sometimes we don't cover the topics, we cover more topics, because it's rather fluid. It's fluid.
And it's an hour show.
1 hour show.
Do you ever run out of questions?
Do I ever? Not ever. There's
Not
actually
ever.
I just said this with our guest today. We recorded. I'm never able to ask them all the questions I want. It always feels like the interview is short, or it ends too quick, even though it is a full hour, or about 52 minutes, I think.
To be effective, have you developed any frameworks for thinking about how you approach a particular interview?
Yes. I like to start with some of their early inspirations.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really that's part of the framework. And the other one is maybe I like to start with something funny. Could have happened either. I like to keep it professional, but something even coming to the station. There's always something just to lighten it up, and I've found that it actually keeps the audience and listeners more engaged, especially at the beginning. Like, what's this going to be? You know, what's the topic going to be, and who is it?
So you always like to ask the guest about something in their past.
Early inspirations, I call it.
What inspired them to become an architect, or inspired them to want to be a mayor or a council person?
Correct.
That's it.
Yes.
Didn't I ask you? Did I ask you?
You asked early in the first part of our interview. You know, did you want to be an architect? And I said, no. And I was always more fascinated and curious about the materials that are used in a project, because I felt the materials and the finish actually form the emotional effect of the building and the function.
Okay, and now I want to share that, I also have my projects that are not necessarily radio or TV, and I have to study different things, and I have used my facility or my capability of being a talk show host to get people on my show who hadn't the knowledge that would help me and also help my audience, help me understand my projects or understand how to proceed with my projects. I've used television and I now use radio talk show to educate myself.
Interesting.
Do you do that?
Yeah, you're always. I think what's the adage is when you teach, you actually learn more. You heard that? You heard that? I totally believe it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so you don't get anxious when you're about to do an interview?
As I said, no, I don't. I even try to force myself because I've heard if you're not nervous, something's wrong, and I go, gee, maybe there's something wrong.
All right. But then you're recording. What if it's live?
I'm not so sure. We're live here.
We're live
yeah.
here.
You just go with it, you know. You go with it and you adjust.
Okay. And so you interview architects and people in their environment as well, suppliers of different types.
Some materials, influencers. It's actually the brief description is architects, influencers, as civic leaders committed to positive and sustainable cities, communities, and lives. Good.
And you have a sound technician with you.
Correct. Our recording engineer, Akshay Jaggi.
Oh, he's actually your...
Akshay Jaggi is
He's the training director.
Well, no, he's the assistant general manager right now.
And he's your...
He definitely is.
Well, that's very interesting. And you and I briefly talked about why it's good to have a sound person.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because I do it without that at this point in time. And so if I'm interviewing you on the radio, okay, and I'm thinking about the time, I'm thinking about the last question I'm going to ask you, and then at the same time, I'm thinking about where do I go when the interview ends? Do I put on CD number 3, or is it CD number 4, 2, 1, turntables, and what songs are all lined up? And it is a distraction.
Yeah.
You know, because you got to think, you know, and then end it with you and go, okay.
How do you deal with it?
How do I deal with it? Well, that's a good point. I get very intense on an interview, really intense. I tend not to hear anything else going on, and then I have to start to get out of that. And I have a piece of paper written, and it says, go to turntable 3 or 2. Next. You know, so when my question is finished, I'm hitting the buttons for this, and I have now lost track of what song it is, and I just, you know, I take, since I'm an interviewer, for me the interview is much more important, although I really am passionate about music. I know what's happening in the interview. I don't necessarily know so much what's going to happen with the music. But I'd like to ask you, what advice do you have for people who would like to be a guest on your show? How's the best way for them to articulate something to you that would motivate you to say, yeah, I'd like you to be a guest on my show?
Yeah, I look for, I don't have a formal checklist, but really one of the most important is their, I call them a luminary in their respective field, and that is someone who's always at the cutting edge of their respective field, and they're reaching, they like to reach out to show, you know, what their skills or talents are, and they've got a certain what's the word, their effervescence about them, and I think that really resonates with the audience. I don't think certainly it does, and then it works well when we're engaging with each other.
So I sort of heard 3 things there. You like people to call you, for example, or you identify people in your environment who are leaders, and they're sort of at the edge, and these are people that, being a leader, I think you have to be a visionary, because you got to know where the path is, or at least decide where it is. So you're looking for people. So if I was to call you and if I wanted to be a guest on your show, I would have to, it'd be good if I demonstrated some vision, some avant-garde thinking, right?
Yeah.
And
a sense of humor.
And it's, oh, you like humor.
Oh, yes, a sense of humor. You don't always get it, but you look for it. And if they've got a little, even if it's just a touch of sense of humor, it's not unusual once we get in the interview that they, it really comes out of them. And it really lightens up the seriousness of which the projects that they've done. I mean, these are, some of them are some of the tallest buildings in the world. And when you can talk and laugh about some things that happen while they're working on the tallest buildings in the world, that really makes you want to listen and hear, well, what's more, you know?
Okay. And I also heard, we're only going to have time for this other point you made, you like people who are ready to share and talk about what they're doing and what they think is important. Would that be?
Yeah.
And because, you know, we do have these architects out there, and they are at their desk 40 hours, 60 hours a week, and they're doing the arithmetics and all of that. And that's not, you need the kind of people, want the kind of people who are out talking, engaging, talking about ideas and everything.
As much as possible, and I seek those out, and I've seen I've met a number of people, guests, professionals over the years to know what you know, are they that way, and not just sitting at the machine all week long, but they actually like to engage with the community.
The name of your show is?
The Modern Architect.
How do people reach you?
They could either via email or phone.
Yeah, but they can log on to KZSU Stanford Radio, and they see the Modern Architect there.
We have an underwriter for our show, and all our shows are aired, broadcast on the radio, Mondays 10 to 11 a.m. and they're also available online. And once they're played online, they're also archived with our underwriter, which is Modler. So it's modler.com/Modern Architect.
Say your last name, first name again,
Diorio.
Tom?
Tom Diorio.
All right, Diorio.
You got it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michael Killen, and my guest was Tom Diorio. Thank you.